I wasn't supposed to notice her that way. Not my friend's mom. Not the woman who'd been a polite presence in the background of my life for years, handing out drinks during study sessions, asking how school was going. But that afternoon, I caught myself staring. And not in the casual, harmless way you notice someone. It was different. She'd asked me to come by because the sliding glass door in her kitchen was stuck. My friend was out of town, so it was just us. The house smelled faintly of lemons and fresh coffee, warm and lived in. When she opened the door, she smiled, the kind of smile that feels like it's aimed at you alone. Her hair was pulled back loosely, a few strands falling around her face. She wore a soft, cream-colored sweater, sleeves pushed up, revealing slender wrists. "You came," she said, and I swear her tone had more weight than it should have. "Yeah," I answered, awkwardly shifting the toolbox in my hand. "You said the door was giving you trouble." She led me into the kitchen, barefoot, the hem of her jeans brushing the tops of her feet. The sliding door groaned when I tried to open it, and she leaned against the counter, watching me. I could feel her eyes on me the whole time, even when I wasn't looking at her. "You've gotten taller," she said, almost like she was thinking out loud. I laughed. "I guess. Haven't measured lately." "You were just a kid last time I really talked to you," she murmured. The words hung there longer than they should have. We talked small, ordinary words while I worked on the door. But under it all, there was something else. The way her voice softened when she said my name. The way her hand brushed my shoulder when she passed me a rag. I kept telling myself I was imagining it. The door finally slid open smoothly. "Perfect," she said, stepping close to test it. Close enough that I caught the faint scent of her perfume. Not overpowering, just a quiet note that made my chest feel tight. She looked at me for a moment. Really looked. "You've changed," she said softly. I swallowed. "So have you." Her lips curved, like she'd heard something in my voice I didn't mean to let slip. "Coffee?" she asked. We sat at the small table by the window, steam curling up from our mugs. The conversation slowed, leaving spaces that weren't quite comfortable, but not unwelcome either. Then she set her cup down, fingers lingering on the handle. "You know," she said, almost hesitant, "every time you visit, I get butterflies." It was the kind of line that doesn't get said by accident. My heart kicked hard in my chest, but before I could respond, she glanced away, as if she just confessed something she shouldn't have. Outside, the wind rattled the leaves against the glass. Inside, neither of us moved. Her hand was resting on the table. Mine was just inches away. I didn't touch her, but I didn't pull back either. And in that stillness, I realized nothing between us would be the same after today. I told myself I should laugh it off, make a joke, pretend she hadn't just said something that would echo in my head all night. But I didn't. I just sat there, my hand inches from hers, watching the way she avoided my eyes, as if she'd accidentally opened a door neither of us was ready to walk through. The moment stretched until she finally stood, breaking the spell. "I should, finish some laundry," she said, brushing her hands against her sweater. But her voice had that softness again, the one that didn't match casual errands. I offered to help. It was a reflex, maybe an excuse not to leave yet. Her laundry room was small, warm from the dryer. She pulled a sheet from the basket, the fabric spilling over her arms. The faint scent of her perfume mingled with the clean cotton. I took the other end when she asked, and as we folded, my fingers brushed hers. Not a full touch, just the back of my knuckle against her skin. She didn't flinch, but she also didn't look at me. "You've been busy?" she asked. "Yeah, work, classes." She nodded. "Your mom said you've been doing well." "I'm glad." Her voice wavered just slightly. I wanted to ask about her, how she'd been since the divorce. I knew the basics from my friend, but hearing it from her would be different. Instead, I said, "And you? How's everything?" For a moment, she stopped folding. The sheet sagged between us. "It's quiet," she said finally. "Too quiet sometimes." I caught her looking at the empty hallway behind us, like she was thinking about all the nights spent alone in this house. There was something in her eyes I hadn't noticed before. Not sadness exactly, but a kind of weight. I wanted to tell her she didn't deserve that. That she deserved someone who noticed the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was nervous, or how her laugh lingered half a second after she stopped smiling. But I bit my tongue. We finished folding in silence. She carried the pile to the bedroom, and I followed without thinking. She set the laundry on the bed, smoothing the top sheet with her palm. Then she turned to me. "You don't have to rush off, you know?" she said, her voice low. My chest tightened. "I've got time," I managed. Her gaze lingered on me longer than it should have. Then, lightly, she reached out and touched my arm, just above the elbow. It was brief, but enough to make my pulse stumble. "I like having you here," she said. I almost told her I felt the same. Almost. Instead, I stood there, her hand retreating. The air between us charged enough to make breathing feel different. And for the first time, I realized I didn't want to leave at all. She didn't move away right away this time. Her hand had left my arm, but the warmth of it stayed there. A ghost of contact that made me feel off balance. I told myself to step back, to say something neutral, anything to defuse what was happening. But she was looking at me like she'd just remembered something she wasn't supposed to say. "You've grown into yourself," she murmured. "It's strange seeing you now." I gave a half smile, trying to make it lighter. "In a good way?" She didn't answer. Instead, she turned to fix the edge of the sheet again, smoothing a crease that didn't exist. I noticed the faint tremor in her fingers. I sat on the edge of the bed without thinking. "You okay?" She hesitated, still facing away. "I'm fine. Just some days feel longer than others." It wasn't a big confession, but the way she said it, quiet, almost apologetic, made me want to close the space between us. I could hear the soft tick of the clock on her dresser, the faint hum of the dryer down the hall. The house felt too still, like it was holding its breath with me. Then, without looking, she sat down beside me. The mattress dipped, tilting me slightly toward her. "I didn't mean to say what I said earlier," she whispered. "About the butterflies." I turned to her. I didn't mind. Our knees brushed. Neither of us moved away. Her lips parted slightly. Not a smile, not a frown. Like she was on the edge of saying something she might regret. And then, the shrill ring of the house phone cut through the quiet. She startled, almost laughing at herself, and stood quickly. "I should get that." I watched her cross the room, her sweater falling off one shoulder slightly. She picked up the phone, her voice softening into politeness, but her eyes flicked toward me once, just once, while she listened. When she hung up, she didn't explain who it was. She just leaned in the doorway for a moment, as if deciding whether to send me home or let me stay. "I made too much dinner earlier," she said finally. "You could stay. Eat with me." I opened my mouth to say I shouldn't, that it was late, that my friend might wonder. But what came out instead was, "Okay." She smiled then, not wide, but in a way that felt private. We stood there in the bedroom for a long beat before she stepped past me toward the kitchen, her hand grazing the small of my back as she went. It was nothing. It was everything. And as I followed her, I realized that if the phone hadn't rung, I'm not sure either of us would have stopped. Dinner should have been the safe part. Plates between us, the low clink of silverware, normal conversation. But nothing about it felt safe. She kept glancing at me over her glass, like she was checking if I was still there. And every time our eyes met, she looked away just a fraction too late. We talked about nothing, the weather, the repairs she still needed done around the house. But underneath, my thoughts were anything but small talk. Every detail felt magnified. The way her sweater slipped down her shoulder again. The soft crease near her eyes when she smiled. The way her fork hovered over her plate when she was listening to me. Halfway through, she set her utensils down. "You've changed more than I realized," she said. Her voice was steady, but there was something in it that wasn't casual. I tried to play it off. "That's what a couple years will do." She shook her head. "No, it's not just that." The air between us thickened. My heartbeat was loud in my ears. "What is it, then?" I asked. She hesitated, eyes dropping to her plate. "You're harder to ignore now." The words hit me like a physical touch. I leaned forward, elbows on the table. "And you're pretending you want to." Her head snapped up, our eyes locking. For a moment, neither of us moved. I could see the pulse in her throat, the way her breathing shifted. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Finally, "This is dangerous." "I know." Her fingers were resting near her water glass. I reached out without thinking, letting my fingertips brush hers. She didn't pull away. It would have been easy to keep going, to close that distance entirely, but the sound of the fridge humming and the faint rain starting outside made the moment feel almost fragile. "You don't have to pretend," I said quietly. She stared at me for a long time, then pushed her chair back slightly. "You think this is easy for me? You think I don't?" She cut herself off, pressing her lips together. "What?" I asked, my voice low. Her eyes softened, but there was a flicker of conflict there. "I don't know if I can stop thinking about you." The words hung in the air like something we'd both been holding back for too long. We just sat there, hands almost touching, rain tapping against the window. Then she whispered, "What are we doing?" I didn't answer, couldn't. And in the silence that followed, neither of us looked away. The rain outside had picked up, drumming a steady rhythm against the glass. We were still at the table, still close enough to touch, when her phone lit up on the counter. She didn't move to get it, but I saw the name anyway. My friend. It was like the air shifted. She glanced at me, then back at the phone, then finally stood and answered. "Hey," she said, her voice suddenly brighter, lighter, a version of her meant for other people. "Yeah, everything's fine. No, he's here." He helped with the door. I heard my name, felt it land different in her tone when she said it to him instead of to me. She was careful, too careful. When she hung up, she stayed by the counter, her back to me. "You didn't tell him I was coming over, did you?" I asked. She turned slowly. "No. And you can't tell him about tonight, about any of this." I tried to keep my voice steady. "There's nothing to tell." She gave me a look, the kind that says you both know that's a lie. And then she said something I wasn't expecting. "You remind me of someone I knew. A long time ago." I frowned. "Who?" She pulled out the chair across from me again, sitting down like the weight of the memory had forced her legs to give out. "When I was in college, there was this guy younger than me. Not by much, but enough that people noticed. We were close, and I ruined it." I leaned forward. "How?" Her gaze didn't waver. I pulled away, told myself it wasn't right. I still think about him sometimes. Something in my chest tightened, half jealousy, half something else. "Is that why you're—" I stopped, searching for the right word, hesitating. She nodded slowly, but there was a flicker in her eyes I couldn't read. Before I could ask more, a car door slammed outside. We both froze. She got up and moved to the window, peeking through the blinds. "It's the neighbor. She likes to check in." Her voice was low, urgent now. "She can't see you here this late." I stood, suddenly unsure whether to leave or hide. "She's coming up the walkway," she whispered. Then, without thinking, she grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the hallway. We ended up in the narrow space by the laundry room, close enough that I could feel the heat of her breath. Her hand was still wrapped around mine, tighter than before. The knock at the door echoed through the house. Neither of us moved. Her eyes met mine, and in them, I saw the question she wasn't asking out loud. And I knew, after tonight, nothing could go back to the way it was. We stayed in that narrow laundry room until the neighbor's knock faded and her footsteps retreated down the walkway. Her hand didn't leave mine until we heard the distant sound of a car door shutting. Even then, she lingered for a heartbeat before pulling away, her gaze fixed somewhere over my shoulder. "You should probably go," she said, but her voice was thin, unconvincing. "I don't want to." She closed her eyes briefly, like she was bracing herself. "This isn't just about what we want." I stepped closer, my words barely above a whisper. "Then what is it about?" Her eyes opened, meeting mine, And for the first time, she didn't look away. It's about him, your friend, about what people will think, about me not wanting to make the same mistake twice. Or, I said, my chest tightening, it's about you being scared this might actually mean something. The silence between us was heavy. I could hear the faint ticking of the dryer cooling down, the rain still pressing against the windows. You think I haven't been trying to fight this? She asked, her voice breaking slightly. Every time you walk through that door, I tell myself to keep my distance. And then you make it impossible. I swallowed hard. Then stop fighting it. Her breath caught. The space between us felt charged, like one wrong move could shatter everything, or lock it in place forever. I can't promise it won't hurt someone, she whispered. I can promise it'll hurt me if I walk out that door tonight. That made her look at me differently. Not softer, but clearer, as if she was finally seeing the truth in what I was saying. She reached up then, her fingers hovering near my jaw, hesitating just long enough for me to know she was deciding. When her hand finally touched my face, it was careful, almost reverent. This is the point where I should tell you to go, she murmured. But you won't, I said. Her thumb brushed my cheek. No, I won't. We didn't kiss. Not yet. But standing there, with her hand on my face and her eyes locked on mine, it felt like everything had already changed. The words I'd been holding back all night slipped out before I could stop them. I don't want to be a secret. She didn't answer right away. She just held my gaze, her breath unsteady, and finally said, Then don't be. It wasn't a confession. It wasn't a promise. But it was enough to tell me that whatever came next, she wasn't letting me go. It was late when I finally left her house. Late enough that the rain had stopped and the streets glistened under the glow of the street lamps. But I didn't feel like I was leaving. Her words were still in my head. Then don't be. It was the closest thing to permission I'd ever wanted from her. For weeks, we'd been circling the same unspoken truth, pretending there was a line we wouldn't cross. Tonight, that line was gone. Not in some big, dramatic gesture, but in the quiet way she'd touched my face and let me see everything she'd been holding back. The next few days were careful. No sudden moves, no reckless calls. But when I came by to fix the leaky faucet, she didn't stand in the doorway this time. She let me in without glancing over her shoulder. We talked about my classes, her work, the usual things, but the air between us felt different. There was no pretending anymore. Every look meant something. Every brush of the hand wasn't an accident. One evening, I asked the question I'd been holding back. Do you regret it? Us? She thought about it for a long time before answering. No, I regret waiting this long. That was the moment I knew she wasn't going to push me away again. Of course, we didn't tell my friend right away. Some truths need the right timing. But we stopped hiding from each other. I came over because I wanted to, not because there was something to fix. She let me stay longer, sometimes all night. The guilt she'd carried in the beginning didn't disappear overnight, but I could see it shift. It wasn't about breaking rules anymore. It was about choosing something worth the risk. And for me, the obsession that kept me awake at night became something steadier. I wasn't just wanting her. I was building a life that fit with her in it. The first time I told her I loved her, it wasn't planned. She'd made dinner. Nothing special, just pasta. And when she laughed at something I said, I realized I didn't want to imagine a life without that sound in it. I love you, I said, simple and certain. She looked at me for a long moment, her smile fading into something softer. I love you too. That was it. No dramatic music, no perfect scene. Just two people choosing each other, fully aware of the mess it might cause, and doing it anyway. And now, every time I visit, she still gets butterflies.